Hi, everyone, and welcome to Rock and Roll High School. Our guest this week is one of the most influential and enduring voices in American music, the legendary Judy Collins. From her groundbreaking recordings of the 1960s and 70s to her lifelong role as an interpreter, songwriter, activist, and storyteller, Judy Collins has spent more than 6 decades shaping the landscape of contemporary music. Her crystalline soprano voice helped introduce audiences to the work of writers like Leonard Cohen, Joni Mitchell, and Randy Newman for the first time, long before they became household names, while songs like Both Sides Now, Suzanne, and even the great Stephen Sondheim's Send in the Clowns became defining recordings of their era. In this conversation, Judy reflects on her remarkable journey through American music, her friendships and collaborations with artists including Joan Baez, Phil Ochs, and Stephen Stills, the stories behind some of her most iconic recordings, and the deeply personal experiences that have shaped both her music and her life. We also discuss her acclaimed books, her Oscar-nominated documentary, which she produced and co-directed, and her upcoming Sweet Judy Blue Eyes Farewell Tour, which kicks off July 4th, 2026, and continues well into 2027, celebrating one of the most extraordinary and influential careers in modern American music.
I woke up, it was a Chelsea morning, and the first thing that I saw was the sun through yellow curtains and a rainbow on my wall. Blue, red, green, and gold to welcome you. Crimson crystal beads to bacon. Oh, won't you stay? We'll put on the day. There's a sun show every...
Hi, everyone. Welcome to Rock and Roll High School. Thrilled to welcome and absolutely honored to welcome our guest today, Judy Collins. Hi, Judy.
Hi.
How are you?
I couldn't be better.
Great. You know, we're here to talk about the farewell tour, the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes Farewell Tour that kicks off soon. We're recording this towards the end of May in 2026, and the first date of the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes Farewell Tour is on the nation's anniversary, July 4th, down in Colonial Williamsburg. So how do you feel? I mean, you've been doing this for a lifetime now, and you're finally calling it quits, saying this is the adieu to the road, and your Sweet Judy Blue Eyes Farewell Tour kicks off in July.
Well, let's see. Tour is the big word. Tour, because I've been touring since 1959 when I started doing this. So tour is the big reason for this, and all the rest is plumage.
Right.
I call it plumage.
I mean, you're hitting pretty much every city in America. You're bringing some incredible artists with you on this tour. Richard Thompson, who's been on this podcast, who I adore.
Oh.
Bruce Cockburn, one of my favorites. Livingston Taylor, Mary Chapin. I mean, some amazing people who will be touring with you if our audience goes out and sees Judy on the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes Farewell Tour.
It's nice to have that title, so I'm glad that I had a romance with Stephen Stills.
Let's talk about that. I mean, obviously, the tour is called Sweet Judy Blue Eyes. Your memoir, your great memoir from 2011 is called Sweet Judy Blue Eyes, My Life in Music. And it all stems from this relationship you had creatively, musically, and romantically with Stephen Stills.
You know, I have David Anderle to thank because he put that album together. He put together all the musicians who played on my big 1968 album. And Stephen came on board, and we started our friendship and then our romance. And then, you know, we've had a lifetime friendship, and I wouldn't call it an ongoing romance, but it's certainly an ongoing friendship. And we speak regularly. We always do. We went on a fabulous tour for a year and a half. I don't know if you remember, 2017 and 2018, I think. We did 115 shows in a year and a half. We were on stage the whole time together, both of us.
Wow.
We each had one song and everything else we sang together.
Wow.
Now, I adore Stephen. I talk to him all the time. I told him I have this text that we indulged in for for 7 years. And one of these days, I'm going to print it out and send it to find out what in the world we talked about. We talked about everything, of course.
And you guys also made an album together, Everybody Knows, in 2017.
Everybody knows.
And Everybody Knows is the title of the great Leonard Cohen song. And there's something, as an A&R person, I'm fascinated by your ear and your ability to hear songs and record them before the songwriter records them themselves. So obviously you did that with Leonard, with Everybody Knows. You did that with Randy Newman. I Think It's Gonna Rain Today. And you did it most famously with Joni Mitchell. So I would love for you to tell, a story about this, because it's just so fascinating to me.
I used to drink, and I don't anymore. And in 1967, I was passed out and sound asleep, and the phone rang, and it was 3 a.m, and I picked up the phone, and it was my friend Al Cooper. I was very good friends with him. I've talked to him recently. He's happy. He's married. He doesn't go out and fool around anymore. But that night, he called me, and I said, "It's 3 a.m. Where are you?" He said, "I'm at a club, and I met this girl, and she says she's a songwriter, and she was good looking. So I followed her home, and she started to play her songs." And I thought to myself, and we were very good friends, were. And I said, well, I think I'll call Judy because she's recording next week. And Joni got on the phone with me at 3 a.m, and she sang me Both Sides Now.
Wow, because she had not recorded it or released it herself at that point.
She had not, the one person who had gotten interested in her was a singer-songwriter that I know, and I know what his name is, but I won't say it. But there was one person that recorded a little bit of her. But I was the first, and I was the luckiest. This is an amazing history. I sang it. It became a hit.
I've looked at clouds from both sides now, from up and down, and still somehow it's clouds' illusions I recall. I really don't know clouds at all.
And of course, that happened also with Sin and the Clowns for another entirely different reason.
Right.
But it also goes back to Leonard Cohen. Leonard and I met in 1966. I was friendly with a woman who went to school with him in Canada, lived in his neighborhood, and who was his really, somebody who tooted his horn. And she said, "Leonard wants to come over and see you." So he came over, and he sang me 3 songs, including Suzanne. I recorded Suzanne. It was a huge hit.
Suzanne takes you down to a place by the river. You can hear the boats go by. You can spend the night forever. And you know that she's half crazy, and that's why you want to be there. And she feeds you tea and oranges that come all the way from China.
And then he said, "Now you've made me famous." And I said, "Is that okay?" And he said, "Yes, but I want to know why you haven't written any of your own songs." And so I started in 1966. I walked over to the piano in my apartment, and I put down a song called "Since You've Asked," which is my first.
What I'll give you since you've asked is all my time together. Take the rugged sunny days, the warm and rocky weather. Take the roads that I have walked along, looking for tomorrow's time. Peace of mind.
And it's also the name of your great podcast that you did a couple of years ago. How about that?
Well, that's right. That's right. I did.
You had some great guests. You had Jeff
Yeah, I
Daniels, you had
did.
Jack Holtzman, you had Betty Buckley. It was awesome.
Yeah, and I interviewed Clive Davis, and I said to him, I knew him because he was a friend of my lawyer, and I got to know Clive early on, but I was never a client. But I said to him, "Who got away?" And he told me. He said, "Harry Chapin." And I said, "How did that happen?" He said, "Your guy, Jack Holzman at Elektra, president of Elektra, came up to where I lived and brought a big check."
Oh, that's so funny. Very
So
funny.
Harry wound up, of course, on Elektra.
On Electra with Jack Holtzman. And Jack, God bless him, is still alive, 94 years old now. And what a genius creative. You actually interviewed Jack at our offices at Atlantic Records a few years ago. The two of you have this bond and an intense friendship that you're still dear friends to this day.
Absolutely. And, he came to see me. Bob Gibson was the guy who found Joan Baez.
Joan Baez, right. And he
And
called Jack Holtzman and said, I think I found your Joan.
yeah, exactly. Later on, when I signed with Elektra, he came to see me in Colorado in 1969. And that was when I was opening for Bob Gibson. And Bob Gibson called Jack right away and he came out, but he didn't see me and he didn't stop. He didn't talk to me. So for 2 years, I wondered. And so recently, after 60 or 70 years of our friendship, I said to him, "What happened when you came to Denver and saw me?" And he said, "Well, I listened and I thought you were interesting, but I said, but I didn't know if you were serious." And I said, "Trust me, I'm serious." I'm very serious.
Well, I mean, thank goodness that you guys met and that relationship. You made so many brilliant records with Jack at Elektra,
Oh,
including the live album, the Judy Collins concert in 1964, which he produced with your longtime producer, Mark Abramson. And that album includes, some great songs that have a social consciousness to them, which is so important at the time, like Cold Tattoo, like The Lonesome Death of Hattie Carroll, Dylan's song.
Carol.
But your friends from the time, Joan Baez, you mentioned, her sister Mimi Farina, and Richard Farina and Phil Oakes and Eric Anderson. It's just, I would encourage everybody listening who wants to know more of the story to read Judy's brilliant memoir, Sweet Judy, Blue Eyes, My Life in Music from 2011. And I understand that the upcoming tour, the Sweet Judy, Blue Eyes Farewell Tour, will be filmed for a career-spanning documentary of your life. Is that right?
Yes, that's in the process. Among others, I'll be working because we have a lot of footage, right? Over the years, much footage. But also we got involved with Harry Chapin's family, who are filmmakers, and they have been filming me. It's quite exciting, really. So they'll continue doing so. Eventually, we'll get this movie out there so all of you can see who
Yes.
and what and where and when. I think that's the most exciting part of being a follower of a certain genre and getting to know the people that we listen to and talk about all these years. I mean, I've been doing this 67 years, and of course, every day that I go out, I'm excited and interested and practice every day. And for me, this is a nonstop. This will never be over as far as I'm
Well, I mean,
concerned.
the fact that you recorded 6 new albums, in the last decade, it's like
Yeah.
at your age, most people will slow down, they'll retire, maybe move to Florida. You're not doing that.
I'm seriously not slowing down. I've just started yesterday, and I'm going to continue today. I've started on 2 new songs, which I dug up because I record things on my phone, don't you? And so I record things, and then I go in there and dig around, and I found out that I've done a few things that I'm on the 58th, 59th album. I don't know, but I'm going to do them.
I think, according to your publicist, you've made 55 albums. So
Yeah, something
we'll
like
say
that.
somewhere north of 50. 55 albums.
Somewhere.
But you mentioned that the Chapin family is documenting your life. You also have been a filmmaker. You made a film in 1974, 50 years ago, about Antonia Brico, who was your piano teacher, who became the first woman to conduct the New York Phil. And that movie that you produced and co-directed was nominated for an Academy Award and has
Yeah,
been added to the National Film Registry. It's like,
yeah,
wow,
yeah.
it's one thing to make a life of incredible music, but you have a film that has been anointed as one of the great docs of all time.
Yes, I have. And I'm so grateful. Now I think it's going into the Library of Congress. I was lucky because at 11, my family moved to Denver in 1959. My father was in the radio, but he had a radio show for 30 years nonstop, either in Seattle, in Los Angeles, and in Denver. He was a great inspiration. He was an enormously interesting man, blind from the age of 4, never went anywhere with a dog or a cane, found his way through an extraordinary career. So I was challenged from the age of 5 to be everything I could and to do everything I could. And I had Brico on one side and my father on the other.
Right, right.
It was
right.
an amazing life.
The fascinating thing about your dad that I've read is your dad was also a singer, and your dad
Oh,
made his living interpreting the Great American Songbook
he
catalog.
did. He
So
did.
a generation later, when you're interpreting the new Great American Songbook, the
Yeah.
Randy Newman, the Joni Mitchell, the
Yeah.
Leonard Cohen, I mean, how brilliant is that to continue the legacy of what your dad started?
My mother always said, you didn't invent this. You learned it from your father. And that's true. I learned about what he heard, how he listened to things. My great grandfather found Daddy, Chuck, at the age of 4. He was born in Nez on the Nez Perce, Idaho reservation. He wasn't an Indian, but there he was standing out in the middle of the field clapping. And my grandfather said, Charlie, what are you doing? He said, I'm listening to the barn. Well, that's everything. He heard everything and he chose the great songs.
Mm,
And that's where I learned it. I don't know. I couldn't have verbalized that.
right.
But when I heard, I think it's going to rain today, and actually, what's his name hadn't even recorded it.
What's his name is Randy Newman, by the way.
He was somebody who worked in his studio or in his home or something, heard it and sent it to my people at Elektra. And I said, oh my God, of course this is it. When I hear a song that I'm going to record, I fall in love with it, hook, line, sinker, and heart.
Broken windows and empty hallways, a pale dead moon in the sky streaked with gray. Human kindness is overflowing, and I think it's going to rain today.
What a great ear you have, because it's not only, Randy and Joni and Dylan, as we mentioned, but it's also Pete Seeger. It's also Jimmy Webb.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, the greats. I mean, Jimmy Webb to me is the greatest living American songwriter.
He
And
is.
the fact that you recorded, the version of The Moon is a Harsh Mistress in
Oh.
75, I mean, so brilliant.
Close enough to touch, but careful if you try. Though she looks as warm as gold, the moon's a harsh mistress. The moon can be so cold.
I was desperate. I went over to Elektra, and David Geffen at that point was the president of Elektra. He'd taken over from Jack for a little while, and I said, "I'm desperate. I don't know what to do." It was 73. I'm desperate. I'm desperate. I was about to record my other hit, "Send in the Clowns," but I said, "I don't know what to do." And he said, "Well, why don't you, do some Jimmy Webb songs?" I said, "Who is Jimmy Webb?" I had no idea
Wow.
that the guy who sang all those songs, Glenn Campbell,
Right.
was always singing Jimmy Webb, and I didn't know that. I thought he, anyway, I did. David said, "Well, listen, here's the album. This is Jimmy Webb. Go home and listen to this." I went home, I recorded See Her How She Flies. And a few years later in New York, I got to know Jimmy. I adore Jimmy. And he said to me, I wrote that song 9 years before you recorded it, and it languished. Nobody touched it. And after you recorded it, then everybody took a crack at it.
Wow. Amazing. I mean, because it just shows you, I didn't realize it was Geffen who turned you on
Oh
to Jimmy
yeah.
Webb.
Oh
So
yeah.
I guess
Yeah.
he's got quite the ear as well, apparently.
Exactly. Oh, David is wonderful. And he's always been very kind to me.
That's great. Talk about Sondheim, because I mean, you have three, I mean, quote unquote, it's almost pejorative to say you have three hit songs, but with Send in the Clowns, not only did your recording inspire the Grammy Song of the Year in 76 that Sondheim won, but that version was produced by the immortal great Arif Mardin.
That's right.
Isn't it bliss? Don't you approve? One who keeps tearing around, one who can't move. Where are the clowns? There ought to be clowns.
That's right. I loved Arif. I loved and adored Arif. And the connection with Leonard Cohen is never out of fashion, because he and I became friends in 1966. And among other things, we introduced each other to our friends. So I met Nancy Bacall in 66. She became my friend. In 1973, she called me and she said, "I'm sending you this album. It's called Little Night Music." And she said, "I want you to put the needle on this particular cut and call me when you hear it." I didn't do that. I called Hal Prince. And I said, and Hal Prince answered my call. He said, "Oh, I know who you are." He said, "You're the Both Sides Now girl." And then I said to him, "Look, you've got this great song in your play." And he said, "Yes, it's great." He said, this was May, June, July, maybe of 1973. And it had just come out, the show. He said, "Well, 200 people have already recorded it." I said, "Hal, I don't care how old it is. I've recorded songs that are 2,000 years old. I don't care." And I said, "The thing I need to know is who should I get to orchestrate it?" And of course, he said, of course, my friend Jonathan Tunick. Now, it has become Sondheim's only hit.
Right. Right.
I think that's extraordinary. And both Jonathan and I think it's extraordinary. I've worked with Jonathan on a lot of things, and I love him, and he's a genius. But I said to him the other day when we had dinner, I said, "You remember you're responsible because you opened with da 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 on the English horn.
Wow.
If that doesn't get people
Oh my God.
get people listening, nothing will."
I've heard you say that you're still singing Send in the Clowns in the same key. Is that right?
I sing everything in the same key.
Gee whiz.
I just keep going, I mean, I've got a voice. I better be using it.
Goodness, that's crazy. I mean, you mentioned in passing earlier one of the great record men who doesn't get talked about a lot, and that's David Anderle. David, what a brilliant man. We lost him way too soon, but he produced your single version of Both Sides Now. That's in the Grammy Hall of Fame.
That's right.
Talk about Amazing Grace, because you recorded it in 1970, but it became a hit 5 years later, and it's a cappella. It got on popular radio as an a cappella recording.
Well, it was 1969. No, That's right, 69. I was in an encounter group, which I will tell about in another book. My producer, Mark Abramson, was in this encounter group with me, and he said to me, I think you should sing something because everybody's kind of at each other's throats. And so I sang Amazing Grace. I knew it because my grandmother, who was from the South, from Nashville and other places down there, and she knew the hymn, and she had taught it to me. So I sang Amazing Grace, and the next day, and everybody calmed down. And the next day he called me, he said, we have to record that. We did. Well, first of all, we recorded it with instruments. It didn't work, of course. I said, no, we have to do it a cappella. We went to a little church up here near me on the Columbia University campus, and we recorded it there. I mean, it went viral. Now, I didn't know anything about John Newton, who was the man who wrote the song in 1769, maybe. Anyway, I have a book. I'm looking at it right now. It's by Steve Turner. It's called Amazing Grace, the story of America's most beloved song. During these 4 years that I sang it, and it became a huge hit, and it was in England for 70 weeks or something, and here after that, it was, anyway, I got this huge package in the mail, and it was a manuscript of this book called Amazing Grace. And it was written by a fellow named Steve Turner, who said to me in his letter, I want you to do the introduction to this book, which I'm looking at right now, because you're the one who made this song famous again. It was falling out of the hymnals. People were not recording it. And you're going to tell this story and sing this song for the rest of your life.
Amazing grace, how sweet the sound that saved a wretch like me. I once was lost, but now I'm found.
John Newton was a slave ship captain, and his ship crashed, and he survived, and he decided, and this is, I think, is a piece of good advice for others to follow. It's something to think about often. He changed his mind. A lot of people should be changing their minds lately here. He changed his mind. He recovered. He survived the shipwreck. And he said, I'm not going to do this anymore. I'm going to move to England. And he moved to England and joined a church called Olney. CBS Sunday Morning did a piece on this a couple of years ago. And Steve Turner was part of it, and I was part of it. And they were in Olney in the same church where John Newton wrote Amazing Grace.
Wow. Wow.
So he changed his life and he changed the world. And I think that song has changed the world in many, many ways.
And your version, is now one of the most definitive versions of that song. And like we said, 5 years after you first recorded it, it became a hit. It's now added to the National Recording Registry. So these recording registries and film registries are filled with Judy Collins' work. How about that?
I'm very lucky. My archives are at the Library of Congress. Amazing Grace is there. I did a show there last year. It was fabulous. I visited my archives, and I realized that there I am sitting in this little wonderful theater at this Library of Congress. I was raised on the Library of Congress things that they sent my father. They sent him all the Braille books that he read, including Moby Dick and the Bible.
Wow.
They sent him all of the recordings from Broadway that he listened to and learned all the songs from all the Broadway shows. And they also sent him, and consequently his family, all the recordings of Shakespeare spoken by people like Judith Anderson and John Gielgud, etc. I was raised on the Library of Congress. They should be given a gold star.
Amazing.
all the time, because they have done this for years, 100 years at least, where they help all the people who are blind, who are deaf. You can't make this up.
Right, and it's not something that's well known, so it's great that you're talking about it. As we wrap up, what's amazing is you had a birthday a couple of weeks ago. You are now 87 years old, and you're still achieving career first. You put out an album called Winter Stories in 2019. It was your first #1 album. How about that?
Oh, well, we never stop.
I know you're still creating career milestones. There's a great album I want to mention from 2008 called Born to the Breed, a tribute to Judy Collins. And it's a career-spanning tribute album honoring you, featuring you, and also featuring artists that you've inspired, like Dolly Parton, like Rufus Wainwright and Sean Colvin, but also people like Jimmy Webb and Leonard Cohen and Joan Baez.
And Joan, my friend Joan, I love her to death. She's funny. She's one of the funniest people I've ever known. And I was very, linked to the lives of Joan and Mimi and Big Joan, her mother, and her sister, of course, Pauline. These are people who have lived in my life with me and done things for me. I'll tell you something. Joan Baez called me the morning after my husband died in 2004 on December 4th. I don't know how she knew about this, but she called me up and called me on my landline, the one she knows. Nobody calls me on my landline. I answered it, and she and I talked and laughed and cried for an hour, and I was able to go back to sleep. That's my friend Joni.
That's beautiful.
Yeah.
Well, we're looking forward to seeing you out there for the Sweet Judy Blue Eyes farewell tour. Anything you want to say to your audience before we wrap up?
I love you. You've followed me. You've made my life a beautiful thing. And I've been able to show up for you. What a miracle.
And you're still doing it. So we'll be out there seeing the farewell tour and really appreciate your time this morning, the great Judy Collins. Thank you, Judy.
Thanks. Bye.
Muffin warm and basket brown, smiling faces gathered round our dinner table, close together, hand in hand. I always cook with honey to sweeten up the night. We always cook with honey. Tell me, how's your appetite for some sweet love?
A big thank you to Judy Collins for joining us this week. Judy's story is not just the story of American music. It's the story of artistic longevity, fearless interpretation, and a lifelong commitment to honesty in song. Whether introducing the world to new songwriters, recording future classics before their creators did, or continuing to create and perform for audiences around the world, she remains one of the great voices and great curators in modern music history. And with her Sweet Judy Blue Eyes farewell tour, set to run through 2027, audiences still have the chance to experience one of the true legends of American music live on stage. If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe, hit like, leave us a review, and be sure to share with anyone who's interested in hearing the stories behind the songs. Thanks for listening. We'll see you next time for another episode of Rock and Roll High School.
Rock and Roll High School is a presentation of Pure Tone Music, produced by Pete Ganbarg with assistance from Steve Leeds, Joe Pomerico, Dana Stenson, Aaron Manuza, Christina Katsamanidis, and Rich Mahan. Please visit our website at rockschoolpodcast.com for past episodes and information on what's coming next. All rights reserved.